Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. In this video, I'm going to attempt to cover part 4 of the racing game, which has been a while. It's also been requested quite a lot, so I do apologise for that. I have attempted to make this video so many times where I build it out in the video and it's never worked out right. There's always been a bug or my engine's crashed or something. So what I've decided to do is, this is quite complicated in a sense, but I'm going to talk through it. This probably isn't going to be perfect either. I mean, if you see in this video, it means I've either given up and I'm hoping for the best, or it's gone to plan. Hopefully it goes to plan. But effectively, I'm going to talk through something that's already built. Now, I am also conscious that there's been a lot of time since I made the previous video. So, yeah, so there's a chance that I'm going to miss something. If anybody goes through this and runs into any issues, comment down below and I'll support you to the fullest. Also use Discord as well if you need to share videos or pictures with me. Links down below for that. Right, let's jump into it. So, in the previous video, is it the previous video? The previous video does checkpoints. In video 2, we actually go over this lap counter, this lap timer. Now, obviously, there's a lot of new stuff here. This is the whole new bit that I've added. What we do is we have a race timer and then we have a lap timer. So we split the two into chunks. Now, the lap timer has obviously grown quite a lot. But what I want to talk through is how that has expanded. Now, I can't really remember how I left off the previous video, but what I'll do is every time we go over the start line, so that's just the start line as we drive over, every time we go over this line, what we're doing is we have an overlap event, and if the race hasn't started, so race started is false, what we're doing is we're casting to the controller, which has this start lap event, and then we're doing once start race. We are then setting the race started boolean to true, so that this never happens again. So this will always be true going forward. Once you've gone over the start line, the race has started. This will then never trigger again, effectively. And then I'll come back to this, but effectively what we've done is we've started the lap and we've started the race timers. So the race timer and the lap timer are continuously ticking over now, and that's what these triggers are here. So we start the lap, and effectively what happens is this branch here is just saying is the time from the timeline, which is obviously the thing we're using to count time, is the time greater than 0? If that's false, that means the time has not been started previously and that we should start it. So obviously we're just starting the lap for the very first time, so we're saying false. So is the time greater than 0? No, it's not, because we've not even started it. So false. Turn that off. So the timeline, we're saying play from the start, so start time. And obviously go back to the previous video. If none of this makes sense, you have to watch the previous videos. So that time is going to start ticking up, and then as it's updating, we're basically setting the value of the time as our lap time, and then what we do is we use the macro that we made probably in the second part, time as text, to convert time into sort of like a text format, which looks something like, okay, so they're all, I'll just press the game. So when we play and drive over the start line, what you'll see is That is the actual time value, and then the macro is basically dividing it by 60, dividing it by 60, dividing it by 60, and that gives you your minutes, your seconds, and your milliseconds and stuff like that. It's not quite that simple, but watch the previous video. Yeah, so we set up that macro basically just to sort of break that pure seconds timer down into each of its segments. Yeah, so that's how that's displayed. So we then set that as text, so then the UI itself can be updated. So what we're doing is the lap has started, so we're basically waiting until we come back around to the start line, and then we drive over the start line again. So once we've gone over the start line a second time, we obviously trigger this overlap event once more. We're going to say, has the race been started, which at this point will be true. So because it's true, we're going to go up to this top level here, and we're going to connect. Sorry, we're going to get the reference to the time trial, and we're going to add a lap to it. So in the time trial, what we've done is we've got some variables. Obviously, we've got laps complete, laps required. There's another macro here for laps as text. So that basically just, it takes in the laps required as the first. It just puts a forward slash in front of it, behind it, and then put the laps complete after it. This one's not very difficult, so there you go. It's just an append node of just A slash and then C, and then it just outputs it as text, so it can be displayed on the screen. Where were we? Yep, and then just for the conditions, we're saying if the laps required or laps completed is greater than or equal to the laps required. Obviously, if it's false, we've completed a lap once we're triggering this. If that's true, that means that there's no more laps to do, so we've actually completed the race. But anyway, yeah, so we were here. So all we're doing is when we cross the start line and we overlap this, we're just adding one to this laps complete. And then the sort of time trial then decides whether we've completed a lap or not. What we do then is we go into the vehicle controller again, and we're going to start the lap again. So what we do in here, so this is going to be triggered. Now, the first time we triggered it, we'd not started. This is the second time. So what this branch is going to be doing is going to say, is my time greater than 0? So now at this point, it's going to be true. So what we do is we feed through the true into a sequence node, because we need to do quite a lot of stuff here. The first thing that we do is we're going to get a lap color. So what we do is we get a branch, and we say get the previous time, which we've not set yet. This is not set, so this is effectively going to be 0. So is the previous time greater than 0? That'll be false. Don't do anything. So effectively, we're not getting a lap color. So the first one is just going to be the default color. Second thing that we do, the then one, we're going to then add the lap time to our list, which I'll go into. And then as the time trial, we just say, has the race been set to complete? If it's true, let's say finished. If it's false, don't do anything. Just carry on as you were. And then finally, what we do is we say play from start. Now, this is purely for the lap timer. We're just saying reset the lap timer to 0, play it from the start, which starts at 0 and starts building time back up. And then we go through that same thing again. Now, what you'll notice is when we add the lap time to the list, we're actually taking the current time and feeding it in as the previous lap time. So if we open that up, we're setting the current time to the previous lap time. So that's probably inappropriately named. That should be like current lap time. We set that as the previous lap time, do the time as text, set that as the previous lap time as text, and then we add that to our HUD. I'll go into this HUD in just a sec. Yep. Now, obviously, if this is our second lap, so we've already done one full lap, we've already got one time on the screen. So let me just demonstrate where I'm going here. So we drive over the line, we drive back over the line. You can see now we've got a default lap time added to it. It's not a particular color, it's just a default color. And then if we drive over again, you'll see that now it's in red because we've got a previous lap to compare it to. So was our current lap faster or slower, or is it greater than or less than? So if your current lap time is greater than the previous lap time, then it was slower. So I've set the color of that to red. And then let me go back over it again, and then one more time. You can see that my 2-second lap, because I've just gone over the start line, was quicker than my 28-second lap. It's now displayed in green, which gives you a good indication that you're beating your time. So let's see how that functions. So on our second lap, so we've already got a previous first lap. Our second lap, we're going to come back through this. Now, obviously, this is all triggered by the overlap event in the start line. So we overlap that as the race started. Yes, it has. Great. Increase the laps. That's fine. Start the lap. Brilliant. So we go over to the controller. Start lap. Okay. Is the time greater than 0? Yes, it is. Let's go up here. Let's get a color. Right. Is the previous lap time greater than 0? Yes, it is, because we've got a previous lap time. Because that's greater, we're then going to move on to the next stage. But then they're going to say, is the previous lap time greater than, or is the current lap time greater than the previous lap time? Which obviously would get your current time, let's say. So in my other example, the 28 seconds would have been the previous time. My 2 seconds and 24, I think it was, would be my current time. So this is saying, is 2 seconds and 24 greater than my previous lap time of 28? That's false. So if it's false, it's going to be green because it's better. It's better. If my previous time, which was 28 seconds, and my current time ended up being 30 seconds, is 30 greater than 28? Yes, it's true. So then we'd pick the red colour. Obviously, the way I've done that, you could do it the other way around. You could put that as a less than and flip them. It's absolutely up to you. But then all I'm doing is I'm using a select node to pick those based on a Boolean. Yeah, and to pick the color, this is a slate color, which is the color type that is required for sort of UI. So yeah, based on this true or false, have we gone faster or slower? Pick the correct color, set that as the lap text color. Get our previous time as text and set that to the previous time as text. Obviously, we've done a sequence, so then the next thing is add lap time to list. So go back into here, and what we're doing is, sorry, let's go back. We're taking our current time. So obviously, previous time was 28 seconds. Current time is 2 seconds. Our 2-second time now becomes our previous time, and we add that to our screen. We go through. Is the race complete? No, it's not. So we don't do anything. And then we restart the timer for the third lap. Yep, so that's all fine. So what are we doing when we're adding a lap time to the list? Now, just bear in mind that this is just a function I've made. So you just want to press add and add a new function. And then you get this. I just take in an input of the previous lap time. Technically, it's the current lap time, which we then make the previous time. But yeah. And then we're adding a lap time to the UI. So target is my main screen. So that's my screen with all my stuff, and I've got a lap time heading. I've got this list box. So that is just a list view. And inside the list view, what you need is you need an entry widget class. So what we can do is just browse to that. Let's just open that up. That's simply just a text box in a canvas. So a canvas panel and a text box, nothing special. Desired is, it takes up as much room as it needs to. But that's pretty much it. It's literally just a text box. Behind the scenes, what are we doing? Now, I probably have to explain. Yeah, I have to explain this. When you create a list, there are technically a couple of types of widget. It needs to be an entry widget class. Now, you can use an entry. Let me just check. Let me just check. So class settings. Or is it defaults? I think it's settings, to be fair. It's settings. Here we go. Right. So underneath the class settings, when you create a user widget, you can be a... Okay. So by default, in the class settings of whatever thing is going to be added to a list, by default, it would be a user list entry. Now, these tend to be really buggy for me when I'm trying to update the information on them. If it was a set thing every time, so you make the card and it just has like nothing dynamic. If it's just a picture of a smiley face and you want to add that to a list, brilliant. But if you want to dynamically change the information on that item before you add it, a user list entry breaks for me. So what I do is I come into the class settings, I remove the user list entry. Yes. I then add a user object list entry instead. Using it this way, you get a... Where is it? You get these interfaces, and one of them is event on list item object set. Now, this sounds really confusing, but effectively, we can take an object, which is basically just a really empty blueprint. I can open this up. So here we go, an object. This has nothing in it. There's nothing to display. It's basically just an object. It's an empty vessel that can be sort of used to carry data. It doesn't really do anything. It's just a vessel. It's difficult for me to explain because it's quite unique, but effectively it's not been assigned anything yet. It's just a very bare bones raw vessel. Now, the only things that I've added to this object is a lap time text and a lap color, because they're the only things that I need to pass into my list, my lap time. I only need to pass in the time, and I need to pass in the color that it's going to be. That's it. Okay, so that's just an object. What we do, let's go to the graph, is every time I call, so this is in my controller, this is this node, so add lap time to list. We call this add lap time, which takes us to our main. This is our main with everything on it. Here we go. What we're saying is, let's construct this object, this lap time object, and from our vehicle controller, which has our timer, what color we're going to be, it has all that information. So let's create this object, and because this object has two variables, one called lap time and one called color, it needs that information. So when we're creating this object, it's asking us, well, do you want to sort of assign these variables whilst we're here? Yes, I do. So from my vehicle controller, at the time of creating this, I want to take the previous time as text, and I want to take the current color. Create this object, and then this is the object that I'm actually going to add to my list view. So there's my lap time list, which is this. So I'm going to add an item to this list, and it's going to be this object. So I'm going to add the object to it. Now, what happens is, because I'm adding an item to the list, this list has been assigned the entry widget class of lap time text entry, which is this one, which is basically just a block of text. Just a block of text. So if we go to graph, now this node makes a bit more sense of on list item object set. So basically, when something is added to a list, as soon as it's added to a list, we're going to cast to that object. So the object was added to the list. My entry has kind of been paired with it to sort of like hold this object on my widget, my list. So we've got the list object which was added. We're going to cast to it. Now, because we've casted to it, we have access to all the data that's within it, the variables that we've created, which is the lap time and the lap color. What we can do now is, because we've got a text field on here, this text can have text. You know, it can be anything we want. So let's just reverse that. But it can also have a color. So we can either pick a color and a text. So what we're doing is we're casting to this, we're getting that text out of the object, and we're setting the text on our widget, and we're also getting the color out of it, and we're setting the color. And that's pretty much it. Basically, we're using the object as a placeholder for the data. Once that object has been assigned the entry widget, which is basically just this piece of text, which is the one that is assigned to the entry widget class. Once we've added that, we're just assigning the text to whatever's in our object, and we're setting the color to whatever's in our object. And that's pretty much it. I hope most of this is making sense so far. Now, let me nip back now to this and just make sure that I've not missed anything out, because I feel like that should have covered most things. Obviously, we're checking to see if the race is complete, but again, if that's true, we're just going to go to a print string at this point to say, yeah, we're finished. In the time trial, you know, we're waiting for the laps required to meet the laps complete, or sorry, the laps complete to meet the laps required. Once the greater than or equal to, race is complete. Within this HUD, nothing else is going on. Let's see what's going on with the so we're starting the lap. This is obviously resetting that timer each time we go through. Update laps, let's go back to that. So update laps is basically just changing the text on the screen, so how many laps are complete, because this is bound to our HUD. So I don't think I covered that in my previous one, so just in case we didn't, I'll go over it again. So obviously the start line is resetting that timer. We're also updating the laps. Obviously, this is all within the GM time trial that we're calling these, so they're here. So all laps required and all laps complete are sort of stored here within our HUD, which has got all this information. If we go to the laps here, this is the one that's going to be assigned to a value, and you can see here that it's actually bound. So you can get, because I've explained bindings. So at the beginning of the game, when I press play, I cast to the vehicle controller, set that as a reference, and I cast to the time trial, the game mode, and set that as a reference. Because I've set those as a reference, I have access to all that data. And what I've done is, in my GM time trial, obviously I've got laps as a text field that I'm updating when I call it, and I've just bound the GM time trial laps text to this field. So as soon as they're updated, they're immediately changed on the screen. So that's that. And then at the end, not got to this bit yet, but when the race is complete, what do we do? You might have noticed in here, down here, there was an end lap, but effectively this is unused at this point because everything gets reset when we start. So start, if the race is already carried on, we then reset. So this is technically unnecessary until the end of the game, but I'm not actually calling that yet because the sort of, it just puts a 0-0 at the end if you do it right now. I like to think that's pretty much it. If you get your default text, so when you go over the start line for the first time, for your first lap, the text at the moment's grey. You can see here the text at the moment is like, it's not grey, it's like whitish grey. It's a slightly darker than white. That might be pink for you, and that's because in your object entry under your lap color, you might have a default set to pink or whatever to make it obvious. Whatever the default color here will be displayed on the screen. I think I had, did I have D3, D3, D3? Maybe I didn't. I'm sure I had something like that. I can't remember. It was one of those. Oh, I don't want opacity. There you go. It was something. I thought it was D3. It might have been DB, maybe, or DE. I don't know. Something around there. Yeah. So I think that's it. To be honest. Again, if I've missed anything, I'll try and cover it in a future video. Pop comment down below if you're struggling. What I might do, because this is the biggest bit, I might just leave that there for you to go through. But hopefully, because I've been through each part, you should be able to remake each bit. Again, though, questions, pop them down in the comments or join us on Discord, just in case I need screenshots or sort of short videos. It's easier to share them on there. And that's pretty much it. So if this was useful, consider giving me a like. If you dislike it, obviously pop a comment down there to let me know why. Understandably, I might get dislikes on this video because it may have been a bit messy. Yeah, and I totally understand that. If you want to see more videos, obviously not like this, but sort of built from scratch as I'm talking through them, or talk through them as I'm building them, consider subscribing so you don't miss those, so you get to see them. I've mentioned it already loads of times. Community in Discord, lots of us there. Great way to get a hold of me quick or quicker. But you can join if you want. And that's it. I've spoke far too much. We're coming up to the half-an-hour mark, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. And I hope my kids weren't loud in the background of this. I could hear them screaming and shouting as they're playing. So I hope my mic didn't pick that up, but it probably did. Bye for now.